Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. And Anthony, we get our first Phillies series victory of the year. They take 2 out of 3 against the Cincinnati Reds. Good start in the home opener on Friday. A thrilling comeback that had shades of last October on Saturday. And then about as ugly and frustrating as a loss that you can get on Sunday to close out the series with a chance to get the sweep. And of course, I think where I'm at today as we record this, if we would have recorded probably right after the game, I would have said, well, that was a total blown opportunity and wasted weekend against a team that you should have swept. But, you kind of pump the brakes and you pause and you take a deep breath and you say, it's early in the season. They won the series. That's pretty much all you can ask for. They were sort of lucky to win the game on Saturday. So the fact that they blew one on Sunday, it all kind of comes out in the wash, right? But man, 3-6 on a Monday morning versus 4-5 and coming off a sweep on a Monday morning, just a little bit of a different feel here, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. And I can make, and not that I'm more of the person who believes what you just said, but I could also play devil's advocate and make the argument that if they, you could look at this weekend and say, man, if they don't have that ninth inning rally, then they lose 2 of 3 to the Reds. And then where are we at, right? What kind of things are we saying? So it's probably better to be 3-6 and a little bit frothy over the fact that they blew a game Sunday than it would be, the other way, right? So yeah, I mean, there are some red flags that are starting to pop up, yes, it's early, 9 games in, but you're starting to see things that start to bother you in the games, and they're repeated things that are bothering you in games, and you don't have much more time to sit there and go, oh, it's early, because if these things continue to happen, then it's going to be problematic.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, so I think that I'm trying to figure out what is the tone that I want to bring to the show today. Like, what is the appropriate way to view where they're at through 9 games? And I think that at this point, you're willing to sort of turn the page on the road trip and say, okay, 1-5, it's in the past. They got a series win. You start to feel a little bit better, especially after Saturday. You're like, there's that thing, there's that quality about this team that we saw so much down the stretch last year, and especially once they got into the playoffs, how tough and how resilient they are. And you start to look at them and you say, okay, that's the Phillies I know. That's the Phillies that I expect. But then, yesterday you talk about red flags, and I don't want to focus on just yesterday, but there are things that happened yesterday that I think are now becoming a little bit of an early season trend here. And the alarm's starting to slowly sound, I'll say. Now, I will say before we dig into all of this and we start talking about some of the issues that we're seeing, you look at the standings. And one of my points last week was that this thing can get away from you very quickly. Well, fortunately for the Phillies, in addition to winning 2 out of 3, the Braves had a very rough series, very rough weekend against the Padres. They win the opener, and then San Diego takes the last 3. And then, the Mets lose on Sunday as well. So everybody's sort of jumbled around here. The Braves haven't been able to run away and build that 6-7 game lead that we were fearful of. The Mets are hovering around 500. So despite the Phillies' stumbles here early on, it's not like, oh, man, they have really let this thing get away from them in the early going. So that's the good news.
Yeah, and not only that, I'll add one more little good newsy kind of thing, and it's a very small silver lining, but it's still one that's there. Considering how poorly things started in this season, if you look at their last 7 games, 6 of them were winnable.
Yeah.
And they only won 2, right? So they're 2-4. So you look at those 4 games and go, man, you lost the 4 games that they could have won. But that's the thing. They were in 6 of the last 7. So it's not like they're getting clobbered like they were by the first 2 games by the Rangers and that 1 game by the Yankees. 6 of the last 7, they've been really close games, right in it all the way, to the end pretty much. But 2-4 is not what you want to be in those 6. Nevertheless, it's one of those, okay, there's baby steps kind of getting out of this. And, you hope that they figure it out enough that they'll be able to turn it back around.
Yeah, so I think we could probably work in chronological order here. And because we're doing this on a Monday morning, the Sunday game, the Easter game, the loss is the most recent and probably the game that we're going to focus on the most because I think it's also an illustration of some of the larger concerns that we have. But before we get to that, so that we don't sound overwhelmingly negative out of the gate here, I mean, you go back to the home opener on Friday, and you and I both covered the game in person, and I know that you also covered the game on Saturday as well in person. I just kind of quickly, like, any big takeaways for you on Friday? I think that the two things that I saw, and certainly you wrote about this, I wrote about it a little bit as well. We saw Zach Wheeler sort of bounce back. He too had a rough start in his first start down in Texas last weekend. I was encouraged. I didn't think it was vintage Zach Wheeler. I didn't think it was him at his best, but pitches into the sixth inning and does what he's supposed to do against a pretty underwhelming Cincinnati lineup. But still, I kind of view it and say, all right, that's a big step in the right direction. That looks more like the Zach Wheeler that I expect to see. And then the other big part of it, and I'll let you kind of run with this, is Nick Castellanos. Like, what a weird 9 games it's been for Nick, because, he's among the league leaders in doubles. His batting average is still down. He has no home runs. The strikeouts are up, but we are seeing some positives from him. So why don't you kind of jump into what you're seeing from Nick?
So what I'm seeing from Nick is a guy who is staying committed to an off-season game plan that he could have easily gotten away from, being a 10-year veteran in the league and just immediately going back to what he was used to. And what also I'm seeing from him is a guy who has really, we never really got the notion that Nick Castellanos was like this real cerebral guy, right? I mean, right off the bat, like one of his first interviews was, I'm just paid to hit baseballs, right? Like you weren't expecting to get like these great quotes or great thought-provoking comments out of him. And when I sit there and I talk to the guy, and he compares, where he used to be to where he is here in Philadelphia, and says, I was just used to being at the top of a lineup with guys protecting me and just go up there and attacking the game. That's exactly what he said. I would attack the game. He says, well, now here I'm further down in the lineup, and so therefore I have to have a different approach. I have to approach things differently. And last year I didn't, and now this year I have to, especially because they need him, right? I mean, there's no question about it. With the injuries, they need him to be different. And so it's interesting to see that. And it's also interesting, Bob, that he's playing with, a little bit more personality. He's playing with a little bit more leadership qualities that maybe, was taking a backseat to guys last year, but now with guys out, he's taking that role on as well. And you're right. I mean, it's been kind of weird. He's just 7 for 31 to start the year, which is just a 226 batting average, which is nothing spectacular. But at the same time, he's also walking more than he's ever walked in his life. When you really think about where he's at, he's got what, 7 walks now, 6-7 walks to start the season, which he had 29 all of last year. Right. And that's unbelievable when you think about it, because if you project it out, I mean, I don't expect him to be a 120 walk guy, but at the same time, he's probably gonna blow past 29 pretty quick, right? And like you mentioned, leads the majors in doubles so far. He's got 6 doubles already. So 351 on base is good. 771 OPS could be a little higher, but it's not terrible. So it's really kind of an interesting, weird dynamic with this guy at this point, because you're seeing some things that are like, I want to like this guy. I want to be on board with him. And then you see some of the things he's also leads the league in strikeouts with 16, and say, okay, maybe is he being too patient? Should he be swinging at more pitches? So it's really kind of like you're back and forth with him a little bit. And it's kind of weird. And I'm going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, so when the Phillies signed him, I mean, obviously you love the offensive production, but one of the things that I really liked about Nick Castellanos at the time, like watching him play with the Reds especially, was that just like seemed like he had a little bit of fire to him, like a little bit of edge to his game. You'd watch him come, running across home plate, and he'd be 3 buttons down and the jersey be flapping all about, and he'd be like kind of like ready to almost like flex, like, I am all that is man. Like he had this like real edge about him. And last year, we did not see that at all. And so you definitely do see a player that is more engaged on the field. And I think that you see a player that is certainly more engaged in the clubhouse with the media,
Yeah.
So I think
The thing he did on third base on Saturday, which I don't want to gloss over,
and he did
because
it a little bit on Friday too. I mean, that started on
yeah,
Friday, getting down the line. It's vacated by the third baseman,
yeah,
trying to draw the attention, and then obviously it was the headline or the story really becomes Saturday because of what it led to specifically. But it's fun to watch him play baseball right now. I will overlook the fact that he had a horrendous base running mistake yesterday, but no big deal.
that one was pretty
Well, I
bad.
think what happens is you attribute that to like, hey, look at me. I'm having fun. I'm bringing energy to the base pass. I'm trying some things. I'm trying to gamble a little bit, work the other team. And I think that yesterday was a situation where he maybe pressed his luck a little bit too far.
Yeah, a little
and
bit.
it was a costly mistake, as we know, as things played out in the ninth inning with Sir Anthony Dominguez's meltdown. But, just back to him real quick, I feel like we talk about him a lot on this show because he's just such an important piece, especially with Rhys Hoskins going down, with Bryce Harper out right now. You look at this lineup, and we're going to talk about some of the red flags, but you love parts of this lineup right now, but man, you get to that back end of it at times and you're just like, what is this right now? Is this a competitive, deep enough lineup to really score runs on a consistent basis? So Nick Castellanos and his season is going to be so important to the overall 2023 Phillies story. You talked a little bit about the plate discipline. You go back to his out of zone out of zone swing percentage last year, over 43% in 2022. It's down to 28% so far this season. So when we say this looks like a more patient hitter and we look at the walk numbers, it took him 17 games last season to draw his 6th walk. He did it in his 7th game on Saturday this season. So these numbers are real. Like the approach, it's not just something that we think we're seeing. I mean, it is very, very noticeable, and the numbers back it up. But
even his counts too, Bob. If you look at the number of times that I mean, like he's been ahead or even in 23. 23 of his plate appearances so far, and only been behind in 8.
But then you get to yesterday, and I think this is going to be...
I'm sorry, 29 and 8. I miscounted. I was looking at bats, plate appearances, 29 ahead or even, and only behind in 8. So that's not bad.
So I think the battle with him, though, is going to be this. It's the 9th inning on Saturday. He starts it with the walk. It's a point of emphasis. We applaud it. They blow the lead in the 9th on Sunday, though, and he leads off again in the 9th, and you say, okay, I don't blame him for having a similar approach or, having a similar idea coming into that at bat. But then on the flip side of it, he gets to 2-strike count, gets a fastball right down the middle, bat doesn't come off his shoulder, and you go, come on, man. So I think for him, it's encouraging to see the plate discipline increase. And become significantly better in the early going. I like that he had an off-season plan and he's trying to stick to it in the early going. There have been some good things, but the next step is going to be the attack. And when you can attack, can you do damage? And like, that's what we haven't seen yet. I mean, it's still worth noting. I mean, and I mentioned it on Friday's show, but he went the final 10 regular season games of 2022 without a home run, 17 postseason games, and now we're 9 games into the regular season here. He still hasn't hit a home run. And I don't expect Nick Castellanos to be a 30, 35 home run guy, but I need him to hit at least 20.
Yeah, look, I think it's still a work in progress, right? But I mean, they're trying to change a lifetime of baseball with him. Like, I mean, he's his first 9 years in the league, he did things one way and one way only. And now they're trying to do something completely different. And so it's going to take, I think, more than 60 plate appearances in spring training and 38 and whatever it is, 31 in a regular season to kind of get there. I do think it's encouraging though where it's at and where it's going. The question will be, will Nick be patient enough to let it get there, or will he grow frustrated with it and then revert back to what he used to do before, in which case then he does not help this Phillies team. So that to me is the big let's wait and see with Nick Castellanos.
Absolutely. And then you get to Saturday. And I think the story of Saturday, as I touched on earlier, is about resilience, because Nick Lodolo absolutely blew the doors off the Phillies on Saturday. And
Yes, he did.
we talked about him last week, and he is a up and coming guy. Like, this isn't some scrub. You know how the Phillies used to have that annoying habit of, hey, here's a guy with a 6+ ERA who absolutely stinks, and you know they're not going to hit him. They did that for years. Well, Nick Lodolo is not that guy. I mean, I know that we kind of write off the Reds. They're a bad team. We know they're not going to compete this season, but they do have some young, intriguing pitching prospects. And Nick Lodolo is a guy that last season shut down the Phillies in a start in Cincinnati over 7 innings. 15 strikeouts for Phillies hitters on Saturday. I can't tell you that I was overly excited about the game the Phillies played. I know they won. The 9th inning was great. I think they were beneficiaries of Alexis Diaz coming back for a 2nd inning. There's no question in my mind. I think Nick Castellanos on the bases played a role, and credit to them that when all the chips were on the table, they got it done, and they stole a pretty big win, kind of gave a spark or a little bit of a jolt to an early season that has just really lacked a lot of energy for this team. So I applaud the victory. I applaud the comeback and all of the intangible things that we know exist with this team, or certainly they existed with this team last season. Philly's offense was dreadful on Saturday and wasn't all that much better on Sunday. And so I think that this kind of leads us into this conversation of, great, they stabilized a little bit. They got a series victory. They have the Marlins here this week. Hopefully they can take 2 out of 3. They have their work cut out for them. Again, Alcantara on Monday. I believe they see Luzardo, who's been excellent so far. Like, Marlins are coming in with some good arms, and the Marlins haven't won a ton yet, and the offense is lackluster at best, similar to Cincinnati in a way. But the Phillies have their work cut out for themselves here. But that all being said, you get to this offense. You look at where this starting rotation's at. You've seen some of the leanness, I'll call it, in the bullpen. Like, what is the takeaway? Like, other than 2 out of 3, nice job. Like, what concerns you most right now?
Too many slow starts with key guys, and it's funny to include Turner in there because he was really, he's got 7-game hitting streak to start the season, right? But you look at the last 2 days, and I think his last 2 games were terrible. Schwarber's just not hitting at all. Real Muto, he's been wildly inconsistent as well. I mean, again, credit Lodolo for pitching a hell of a game, but you can't have Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, JT Real Muto, the 3 players who played for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, okay, and carried that team in the World Baseball Classic outfit. They did all the right things in that tournament. Go up against Nick Lodolo and go 0 for 11 with 9 strikeouts. They each struck out 3 times in that game. I mean, you can't have that happen. They were really the inning that bothered me the most is like, okay, maybe Lodolo is like red hot and he's just on and has one of those games and you tip your hat to the pitcher, but they pull him, and in the 8th inning, the Phillies come in against Ramirez, okay, top of the order, and he just blew them away. Like, they were 3 of the most non-competitive at bats the Phillies have had this season, and they were right in a row, and it was Turner, Schwarber, Real Muto. To me, that's the biggest red flag of the offense, because if your star players, if your best players aren't providing offense, what do you expect? I mean, look, if it hasn't been for Stott and Marsh and Bohm, who've really been the offensive catalysts, right? I mean, this team wouldn't be doing anything. And it's weird to say because like 6 of the 9 games, they've had at least 9 hits in a game, right? So most of the time they're getting on base, they're getting hits, but they're really not putting the ball out of the ballpark. This is a different kind of way of doing things. And the Phillies have never been great at manufacturing runs. And I think that's part of the problem. They're getting the hits, but they're not manufacturing the runs. They're used to just, all right, get a guy or 2 on base, and then somebody will hit a home run and we'll have a big inning. Well, they're not doing that. Right. And I think so that's what's the concern is, because I'm not certain that they have that kind of lineup now. And so that they're going to have to find other ways to score runs. And until they have that different approach with runners on base and try and getting them over and getting them in, I think that you're going to still have these pull your hair out moments like, oh man, they could have scored another run there, or they could have had 2 runs there, and they didn't because they struck out or they didn't move the runner or whatever the case might have been.
Yeah, if you go back a month ago, we're talking about the idea of Alec Bohm potentially turning into a 25 home run guy, and that would be a luxury. This team is just flooded with power, and then a guy like Bohm hits 25, and then all of a sudden you say, my goodness. The way that this offense has performed through 9 games, though, I'm starting to look at it and say they might need Alec Bohm to be a 25 home run guy, because there is just a total power outage throughout this lineup right now. Trey Turner yet to hit one, and I don't want to be too hard on Trey Turner. I mean, you said he opened the season with a 7-game hitting streak. 5 of those games were multi-hit games.
Yeah.
The last 2 have been tough. There's no doubt. In the Sunday game, the top 3 in the order, Turner, Schwarber, Real Muto, 1 for 11. They were 0 for on Saturday. You're just not going to win a lot of games if those 3 guys aren't rolling, as you said, and they have not been here for 2 days in a row, all together, all at the top of the lineup. Still, the Phillies were in position to win the game yesterday, and I was concerned with multiple things, I think, and you are kind of taking the approach that the offense is the biggest red flag, and I'm kind of the other way at this point. I am very concerned about what we've seen from this pitching staff, and just to kind of give you a little bit more of a macro overview of this. 9 games now, they've only had 4 starters go at least 5 innings. Only Aaron Nola against the Yankees was able to get through 6 innings. So we had Wheeler do it on in the home opener. He pitched into the 6th. Bailey Falter has pitched through 5 innings now twice. And then you had the Aaron Nola start. But other than that, I mean, that's less than half the starts that they've been even able to get through 5.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned with the starting pitching not going deeper. I think that is a mild concern if it continues, but I think baseball has gotten to that point where they're not even letting these guys get close to 100 pitches. They're pulling these guys when they're pulling them, and is that because the pitcher can't go another inning, or is it because that's the plan? You see what I'm saying? So I'm not that concerned about it. I don't think it's something we just slough off. I think, when you look at a couple of these starts, you say, yeah, they probably needed more. And I'll give you a Falter start, for example. He probably goes more than 5 innings if he doesn't throw 50 pitches in the first 2.
Sure.
Right? I mean, but he retired. The last 12 batters he faced, he retired.
But I can live with Bailey Falter going 5 innings.
Sure, so can I.
I can live with that. When you start talking about not being able to hit the 5th inning, though, to hit the 5-inning threshold, that's a different problem. I know the game's different. I know that you rely on bullpens more than ever. But even yesterday, for instance, we could talk about Sir Anthony Dominguez. We can talk about Craig Kimbrel, and we will. But you look at Taijuan Walker, who can't even get you through 5, and then you have to turn to 5 different relievers to try to nail down the last 4+ innings of the game. Like, you need Taijuan Walker to be better than he was yesterday, and really than he's been this season. He's thrown 9 innings across 2 starts now. He's walked 8 in 9 innings. And yesterday was specifically concerning to me because I did think that he threw the ball okay on Monday night against the Yankees. But yesterday against the Reds, when they entered the 3rd, 4th inning, I mean, I don't want to be overly critical, but I had turned around. I was at home as well. Easter Sunday, I turned around and said to my dad, I was like, this looks like he's throwing straight slop up there right now. So then you open up Baseball Savant, you look at the StatCast numbers. And against the Yankees, he averaged 94.9 miles per hour with his fastball. Yesterday against the Reds, it was down to 92.6. I mean, that's more than 2 miles per hour off the fastball in 5 days. And to me, that is extremely concerning. When you look at the lack of command, you see the diminished velocity. I'm just kind of holding my breath on Taijuan Walker because he is so important to what they're going to do this season, especially with Ranger Suarez behind schedule.
Yeah, Walker has been the one concern so far. I agree with you there. Look, I mean, that, you point out the biggest concern of yesterday's game is the fact that he's 2 miles per hour behind his previous start. You wonder if that's again, you look at how small his workload was leading into the season, And does he need a little bit more time between starts because his arm's still not built up to where it needs to be? So like, would one more day have given him, I'm just saying, I'm not making an excuse, but would one more day have gotten him back to 94 as opposed to being at 92, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that, and that's because he didn't have the workload that he needed to get ready for the season. It's not good enough either way. But we'll find out with his next start and see where he's at. I think that's when you have a start like that and go, okay, that was not good. Like, I thought his first start was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. I mean, that was the game that they got beat 8-1 by the Yankees, but all the issues were with the bullpen in that game more so than Taijuan Walker. It was like, okay, that was whatever. But then this one, you take a step back. You go, all right, now that's not good. Go to start 3. If start 3 is along the same lines, then I think we go ring the alarm bells. If start 3 is a little bit better, you say, all right, maybe that's where we're at. So that's how I look at it. But I think you're spot on. Like, to me, that's the biggest concern right now with the starting rotation. Well, obviously there's no Ranger Suarez, right? So maybe it's the second biggest concern. But of the guys that are pitching right now, that's the biggest concern.
So then we get into the bullpen, and just looking at yesterday's game specifically, Soto, nice appearance, clean inning. Alvarado just continues to be unbelievable. 3 more strikeouts. I mean, we should probably try to drag out the Jose Alvarado conversation a little bit here for at least a minute or two, so we sunshine into this podcast. I mean, He has been phenomenal. You know, the conversation coming into this season about Jose Alvarado was, wow, what a great job to rebound and sort of resurrect his career in Philadelphia. We're talking about a potential DFA for him in May of last season. And he just goes down and he figures it all out and he comes back and he's so good for the Phillies. And I know it didn't end well with Yordan Alvarez in the World Series, but guy just sort of ran out of gas. But my question coming into this season was, would he be able to maintain that momentum? Could he carry it over and continue to attack the strike zone, continue to pitch with that confidence, and really let that stuff play? And not only has he done it thus far, he's been even better. He's been unhittable. And I mean, that is not hyperbole. He's been unhittable.
He struck out 11 of the 13 batters he's faced in this season so far.
Amazing.
I've never seen it. And no walks. 1 hit, no walks, 11 strikeouts. That's just it's off the charts. It's only 4 innings, man. But my word, their batters are just flailing at pitches up there against him. They don't know what's coming. They can't touch his
totally overmatched.
The cutter, the splitter, no matter what he's throwing. It's just not a splitter. That was Hector Neris. With his other pitch is a sinker, right? So it's just he's just blowing people away. Really, really impressive, and almost to the point, Bob, where I'm saying if he's going to be this good, even though it's early in the season, don't you almost say this is our guy in the back of the bullpen at this point, considering everything else that's going on? Like, we got to make him close it out.
It's an interesting thought, and I'll say this. I know that the Gregory Soto experience early on has been a bumpy ride, but you watch him, at least I watch him, and I say, I get this. Like, I get the talent. I think it's going to straighten itself out. I expect him to hit his stride. And you see, wow, the Phillies really have 2 big-time weapons from the left side. And you can dream on that a little bit. And in a perfect world, Sir Anthony Dominguez and Craig Kimbrel figure it out, and you just simply use these guys in late innings as you see fit. You go match up. Say you face a left-handed heavy part of the lineup in the 8th inning, deploy Alvarado. That's what they want to do, and to date is what they're trying to do. But if Craig Kimbrel is going to continue to struggle, and the thing that I see with him is just the off-speed stuff, the breaking stuff it's just not there. It's either non-competitive or it's just hanging in the zone, and it's getting pounded right now. Sir Anthony Dominguez, I think it's twofold. One, you've talked a lot about this pitching staff just being a little bit behind schedule, and I think that he may fall into that as well. But you watched the 9th inning yesterday. It's almost like an offense in the NFL with under 3 minutes left, and they have the football, and they have the ability to let the play clock wind down and take time off the clock. You don't have to rush. and you're watching Sir Anthony Dominguez out there, and the game is getting away from him. And the pitch clock does put a little bit of additional pressure on you, but he's exacerbating the problem because he is just back on the mound and go, back on the mound and go. I mean, he is just rushing beyond the need in which he does not need to rush to the extent that he is at this point.
Yeah.
He is so far out of whack right now. And I would tell you that this too falls into the idea that these guys are just a little bit ill prepared, whether it's ramping up and being ready to kind of come out firing, or just even being ill prepared to deal with the rule implementations. It's strange. Like, this staff right now, if I had to like really point a finger at something early on, this staff doesn't look like it has this team ready right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. Yeah, Dominguez, it's funny because, we know the rules are the batter has to be engaged with the pitcher by the 8-second mark, or else it's, a pitch clock violation on the batter. But when you watch Dominguez, it's like he's pitching at 8 seconds.
Yeah.
He's not using the fact that he has 8 more seconds after that to kind of, do what he has to do. If he needs to breathe once or twice before delivering the pitch, then do so, man. Like, that's the one thing that's just, he's so flabbergasted by it that it seems like he's just rushing through his delivery, and it's not working right now. They had 9 walks in the game yesterday, Bob.
It's unbelievable.
That's too much. It's just too much. You can't win. You really can't win games if you're going to walk 9 batters. The bullpen has been a little bit hit or miss for me. Obviously, there's guys who've been great. We mentioned Alvarado. Soto, his last couple of outings have been really good, and he had one other good one sandwiched between 2 bad ones. So, but I do see, I agree with you. I do see what works there, and I think that he'll be fine. Bilotti and Brogdon have both been really good for them, and guys that they're going to lean on up for multiple innings, it seems like, in a lot of games. I mean, Bilotti's pitched 6 out of 9 so far. I think Brogdon's 5 out of 9. So like, these guys are getting a lot of time, and they're pitching well. So I think that there are guys you look in that bullpen and go, okay, yeah, they're doing their job. But there are guys like it's Kimbrel and Sir Anthony that have been the biggest concerns to me to start off, and it's a shame because they're your right-handers at the back of the bullpen,
right?
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, you need at least one of them.
You can live with one going through some struggles early on. I mean, having both of them struggle early on simultaneously is a different story. You even see yesterday, Dominguez gets the first out in the 9th, and then he gets Stuart Fairchild, and he walks him on 4 pitches.
Mm-hmm.
It's a non-competitive at bat, and you're talking about a guy that's a .231 career hitter, and you go back to the greater point of this game and talking about 9 walks. It's not that it was 9 walks against some elite offense, and you're trying to be too fine. You're talking about a bottom third offense.
Yeah.
Attack, throw strikes, make them beat you. And to watch that staff yesterday sort of unravel the way it did. And all of that being said, we're sitting here watching this play out, and you're like, wow, the Phillies really might win a game in which they walk 9 batters and also make 3 outs on the base paths. And when I come back to this idea that the staff doesn't have this team prepared, listen, I'd be the first to tell you, and I know that when we went through the Gabe Kapler years, I would point this out all the time. These are Major League Baseball players. They have to come in with a certain level of understanding, IQ of how to play the game. When Odubel Herrera was making stupid mistakes last season, I didn't blame Joe Girardi for that. You know what I mean? Like, or you know what I'm saying? Like, when he would make stupid mistakes under Gabe Kapler, I didn't think that was Gabe Kapler's fault. When they would make errors or play poor defense, I didn't think that was the manager's fault. That's you are who you are to an extent when you reach this level. But that being said, this is the base running thing is just something you don't expect to see be an issue. And through 9 games, it's repeatedly been an issue. It's not like we're just looking at yesterday's game and saying, wow, Marsh blows through a stop sign. He picks it up way too late. I have no idea how he doesn't pick it up, but he's way too late. He blows through it, spins his wheels. He's out at third base. Back earlier in the game, Schwarber scores. Castellanos tries to ride his tail. He's out by 25 feet at the plate. And you're like, what are you doing, man? Like, what's the communication breakdown? What's the thought process breakdown there? And then even late in the game, I know they're winning at this point. I think they're holding a 4-3 lead when Schwarber in the eighth tries to extend into a double and he's thrown out. We saw it earlier with Derek Hall earlier this week in New York. It ends up costing him probably 3 months. I just don't know what's going on here, but when it happens all the time, you start to say, like,
yeah, hey. It happened in Texas when Marsh got thrown off a third. You got Trey Turner getting picked off of first base. Yeah. You had Real Muto banged at second when he overran the bag and then slipped a little bit and tried to get back. And so yeah, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of base running gaffes here to start the season, and more than there should be. Part of that could be that they want to be aggressive, and that they want to be like, we're the Phillies and we're going to do this and we're going to force you to make perfect throws and get us and stuff like that. And that's okay at times. Like, but if it becomes a little bit of a chronic thing, Bob, if it becomes like an issue like now, you say, okay, let's pump the brakes on that approach for a little bit. Let's get back to doing it be patient, be cautious, make sure that when we're going, we know we're going to go and we know we're going to be okay, right? And let's not be uber aggressive, because it may not ever level out. You might get into a mindset where you are always that way and making bad decisions. And you can't be running through stop signs. You can't.
Do you think that there's, I mean, totally agree with you. I'm just kind of curious. You look at the power numbers, and we talked about this earlier in the show. The Phillies have hit 7 home runs this season. 7.
Yeah.
Only 3 teams have less: the Guardians, the Tigers, and the Nationals. So you look at that, and you look at this lack of thump that this lineup is displayed in the early going. I mean, do you think that there's any correlation between that lack of thump and maybe guys pressing a little bit, saying we have to grab extra bases, we have to, manufacture's not the right word, but we have to gamble a little bit and try to take more, because we know that we're down Reese, we know that we're down Bryce, we know that this offense right now isn't quite what we thought it was going to be 3 weeks ago. So do you think that maybe, whether it's at top of mind or subconsciously, these guys are just playing a little bit overly aggressive and running themselves out of these innings to try to compensate for this? I mean, I look at those numbers, and I just did that in real time. I knew that the Phillies were struggling in terms of home runs and power this season, but my God, 7?
Yeah.
I mean, to put that in context, the Rays, who lead MLB, 24 home runs. And I know the Rays are on a different planet right now, but you even go back to the Dodgers, who were second with 18, the Giants with 17. You would think that the Phillies would be a team that would have 13, 14 home runs by now.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem with the lineup being what it is, right? No Harper, no Hoskins, no Hall. That's a lot of power. It's coming out of the lineup, right? So you're probably not going to be where you kind of expected to be, but you shouldn't be third from the bottom either. I mean, you still got guys who can hit the ball out of the ballpark. You shouldn't be that far down. And I think that's indicative of the slow start by Schwarber, Turner not hitting a home run, Real Muto being inconsistent, Castellanos not hitting any home runs. I think that's why you're down where you are. Nevertheless, yeah, that is a slight concern. I mean, I'm not a big home run or bust guy, right? I prefer the game the way that the Phillies are playing it a little bit right now, in the sense of get the hits, and drive in runs that way. I'm kind of old school in that regard, but I do admit you do need more than 7 home runs in 9 games. You need a little bit more balance. You can't be this bereft of power and expect to win. This isn't the 1985 Cardinals, right? You're not running around the bases like those guys did. So yeah, you do need a little bit more power.
Well, let me ask you this then, just to kind of, I guess, reset everything through 9 games, new week coming up here. On a scale of 1 to 10, I have 4 topics for you. All right. So we'll just summarize what we've sort of talked through, because we see all of these problems. We know it's early, though. I think that generally speaking, we're both fairly optimistic about this team's ability to recover and where they're going, I think.
Yeah.
So let's just look at the offense, what it is right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence level in this lineup moving forward?
7.
Okay, and I would imagine that a lot of that comes from the thought that Bryce Harper will probably return in May sometime,
Even if it's very early June,
Yeah,
I'm still confident enough that they can get to where they need to be. My reluctance is I really don't know what they're going to get production wise at first base. If you assume, like Rob Thompson says, I think of Alec Bohm as our third baseman. Then, if that's the case, I'm not sure what the production is going to be at first base.
I think that thought lasted all of one game of Cody Clemens. I mean, it sounds like now they're going to go to Bohm, Sosa against lefties anyway.
For sure against lefties.
And it looks like maybe more so against righties than they initially let on as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that they will? I mean, I think that this is probably a Captain Obvious question, but I mean, do you think that they go out and add
they're going to
somewhere?
They're going to have to add a bat.
Yeah.
They're going to have to, and it's going to have to be a power bat. Yeah. It's going to have to probably be closer to the deadline, and they're going to have to make do until then.
Yeah.
Because I don't think teams are going to trade off anybody without asking for a premium this early in the year. But yeah, I don't think I don't think they have a choice. I think they have no other alternative but to do that.
I'll just give you a number. I'm not going to elaborate any further because I think we've touched on the main points. I'm at about a 6 with the lineup right now. Mm-hmm. The bullpen.
On the whole, I'll put the confidence level a little bit higher. I'm going to go 8 with the bullpen. I'm really worried about Kimbrel just having lost it. I mean, when you're bouncing your slider 52 feet, I mean, really, we were there together when he came in that one slider. Oh no, was it you there sitting there? Or maybe I was talking to Howard. Maybe or both of you. I don't remember if it was opening day or the day after. He was bouncing his breaking ball like really short of the plate. If you don't have that, then they're not going to sit back. You're not going to blow him away because he's not a fastball guy. You're not going to blow him away. So he's a concern. I'm confident that Dominguez will find it at some point. I just think I'm just a little worried about him right now. And I like Soto and Alvarado and the other guys. So I think the bullpen will be okay. I'm go 8 on the bullpen.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I actually still feel pretty good about this bullpen, despite what I saw on Sunday.
Yeah.
And despite what we've seen with Craig Kimbrel to this point, I too remain pretty optimistic that this is a good bullpen. I expect this to be a top 5 bullpen in the National League when the dust settles. And then that brings us to the rotation, and I'll just go out ahead of you on this one first. I was so excited by this rotation coming in. The idea of pairing Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler 1-2. I really liked the middle of it with Suarez and Walker. I was really excited about that. At times when they're at their best, they all pitch like number 2s. And then the idea of bookending it with a guy like Andrew Painter, and having Bailey Falter be that 5th or 6th guy, or however they wanted to kind of go about allotting their innings. It has not played out that way at all. I'm very concerned about this starting rotation right now. And I will just say this. I am not as high on Aaron Nola as some people are. I still think he's a very good pitcher. I don't expect him to continue to have struggles. Like, I think that he'll be okay moving forward. I think Zach Wheeler will be okay moving forward. I still feel good about that tandem at the top of the rotation. But after that, I really am not sure. Until Ranger Suarez is back, until I see him live, I can't tell you that I'm overwhelmingly confident about what that's going to look like. I'm very concerned about what I've seen from Taijuan Walker through 2 starts, especially yesterday. And you said it earlier. I think that this next start will kind of be the one that tells the story. If he doesn't rebound, if he still looks like he's down with the velocity, he's struggling with his command, I think that you start to hit the panic button on him a little bit. Andrew Painter, I hope that we get an update, like a true update of what his timetable might look like sometime this week, hopefully, because right now it's a little bit hush on him. I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion that we're just going to see him come late July, or that he's going to be that he's going to hit the ground running when we do see him. I have concerns about this starting rotation right now. So like my confidence level in this rotation is about a 5.
I'd go 5 as well. And I think my 5 might be a little bit more optimistic than your 5. I think your 5 might be 5 with an arrow pointing down, and my 5 is
Yeah,
5
that's fair. Yeah,
with an
yeah.
arrow pointing up, right? I too have the same concerns that you have about Walker, and I have a concern that Suarez, does he come back, and is he okay? I know they did the MRI. I know there's no damage in the elbow, but we've seen it before when you have that forearm tightness, and then they check the elbow, and then they look it around. It's not there. There's nothing there. And they come back and they pitch for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, the problem shows up, and you're shut down for a year. I mean, sometimes if you had to get Tommy John, right? So that's my concern, is that Suarez never gets to be Suarez. We never get Ranger to be Ranger. And Bailey Falter is Bailey Falter. I'm fine with Bailey. If Bailey Falter is going to come out and give you 5 innings and give up a run or 2, and then you got to turn it over to the bullpen, he's doing his job as far as I'm concerned. He doesn't need to be better than that. He could even probably be a little bit worse than that. And, and as long as he's keeping you in the game, right, then I'm okay with Bailey Falter. My arrow up is I do think Painter will be okay. I do think Painter will pitch important innings for the Phillies this year. And if that is the case and he turns out to be what everybody thinks he's going to be, then I think your confidence level in the rotation can go up higher. So that's why my arrow's pointing up from 5, but only because of that. I do have the same concerns that you do.
Well, you and I both picked the Braves to win the National League East at the start of the season. And
yep.
I haven't seen anything, despite Atlanta's struggles this past weekend. I haven't seen anything that gets me off of that prediction. But I will ask you, your confidence level in the Phillies winning a wild card spot, which we both predicted at the start of the season. Obviously, we were not expecting a 3-6 start. I think we both had the Phillies 5-4 through 9 games when we sort of did the what will April look like. We know that this team has some issues right now. We know that May is looming and a very difficult schedule. What's your confidence level in the Phillies winning a wild card spot right now?
It remains high because I look at the National League and I don't see it. Look, we know what the division is. With the Marlins and the Nationals, I don't think are involved in the wild card conversation. When you look at the Central, boy, the Cardinals, and this was my big concern, is why I picked the Brewers to win the division. Not because I thought that the Brewers were a great team. I don't. But the Cardinals pitching is just terrible. It's just they're not going to have it. I don't know where it's coming from, so I don't see them in the mix. The rest of the Central is blah. Right? There's nothing there. I'm not looking at I don't think that the Cubs are anything special. Obviously, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, so there's nothing there. And you go out west, yeah, the Padres, great. Dodgers are probably going to figure it out. I mean, they're off to a slow start too, so they're going to be in the playoff mix. And I don't know if I think Arizona is really young and doesn't have pitching beyond Gallen and Kelly. I don't like the Giants a little bit. The Rockies stink. So, even if the Phillies end up being the 6th team again, I don't see a 7th team that's better. So my confidence remains high that the Phillies are a playoff team.
All right. I know you have a one last thing probably lined up, and
a fun one too this week. I have a fun one this week.
I meant to mention this earlier in the show, and it just sort of got lost. And I feel like we can't go through the show without bringing up Bryson Stott, who right now is 5th in Major League Baseball in hitting. He's tied for 6th in terms of most hits. He's been outstanding.
9-game hitting streak.
He's been really he's just been unbelievable, and he's a grinder. We've talked so many times about the professional at bats and how tough of an out he can be, and when you really need a guy to bear down and give you that quality at bat, he's the guy. And we've always sort of looked at him and said the numbers may never blow you away, but when you just watch him play day in, day out, you just come to appreciate the type of player that he's going to be and the type of player that really he already is. But now all of a sudden he gets out of the gates. He's blazing hot right now. I don't really know where to take the conversation with Bryson Stott, except to say this. How much would you need to see from him in terms of a sample size before you start to say, maybe we do something with the top of the order? Because
I'm there.
Are
already.
You there?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm looking at this start and I'm looking at Kyle Schwarber's start, and I just don't feel that Kyle Schwarber is a true leadoff man. I don't think that he is a true. I know the game's different. I know that hitter profiles and the way the lineups are constructed are different now. Yeah. I don't love Kyle Schwarber in the 2-hole. He just doesn't get on base enough. And if we can play that power clean up 5, 6 with him, great. Like 5 would be good. But if Bryson Stott's going to be this guy and this good, to me, Turner 1, Stott 2, figure out the rest from there.
I'd actually change the whole lineup right now, Bob, because of the inconsistency that you're getting from the top of the order. I would go Turner, Stott. I would bat Bohm 3. I really would because of the way the way he approaches his hitting as well. It's very, very good so far this year. And then I put Schwarber probably in the 4-hole, traditional cleanup power guy, right? You hope guys are on base and he can just put them that way. Even if he is struggling, he's still going to lean into one. Right. all the time, like every once in a while. And if you got guys in front of him, then it becomes a big inning, right? Schwarber can have one good at bat a game and give you 3 runs, right? Yeah. Because of it. So you still bat him 4. I'm either or on Castellanos and Real Muto 5, 6, either way. And then, probably Marsh 7. And
I think that's the only issue is that when you do this, because you say, wow, I really like what I have at the top. And then if you pack Bohm and Stott at the top, then you look at 7, 8, 9 on any given night, especially if Muno Sosa's not in the lineup.
Yeah.
You go, oh my God,
Yeah.
The Jake Cave, great spring. Hopefully he gets it going. It's very early, but he's had some fairly underwhelming results here so far.
Yeah, him and Harrison both have had underwhelming results.
Harrison is a guy that I think we've kind of sort of glossed over a little bit. We know that he's got a great track record. He's a good clubhouse guy. We know why he's here. It makes sense. But he has not given this team very good at bats to this point. Christian Pache has been, I know he had the double on Saturday. He seems to, I don't know that in such a limited amount of playing time, I've ever been aggravated or so aggravated by one player in just such a small sample of playing time. He has really not endeared himself to this fan base through 9 games. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, he has not. Yeah, you're right. The bottom of the order does become a little bit of a concern, but I kind of think it is what it is at this point, right? I mean, you're going to have to make. I'm not concerned about Marsh. I think that Marsh is fine. Yeah. I only get concerned about him against lefties, but if you can run against a right-hander, I think Marsh slots into the lineup just fine. And you know what? If the bottom of your lineup is as bad as it is, guess what? It's going to be that bad no matter what. So you make them 8, 9, and just hope they get through them quick and get back to the top again.
Right.
It is what it is at this point. So,
all right. Well, let's jump into that one last thing here and wrap it up.
Bob, I know you had to see it, right? I know you had to see the Rocket City Trash Pandas.
I did see the Rocket America's team. Some are calling them.
How do you throw a no-hitter and lose the game 7-5? That is the most fascinating result I think I've ever seen in the history of baseball. Now, to be fair, it was a 7-inning game, okay? But the fact that a team scored 7 runs without getting a hit blows me away. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. And did you see how the 7th inning played out? Did you see what it went? It went walk, pop out, walk. So now bases loaded, strikeout. So you got bases loaded, still got the no-hitter, 1 out away from the no-hitter. You're up 3-0, and then it goes walk, a dropped fly ball. It was a can of corn. It was an error. And then this is the best part of the whole thing: hit by pitch, walk, wild pitch, hit by pitch.
Hey, you're sitting in the dugout. If you're on the Trash Pandas coaching staff, you're sitting in the dugout. I think that second hit by pitch, you go, what are we doing? Now, I know that this sounds absolutely like ludicrous to you, this whole sequence, but if you've ever coached sub-level high school baseball, like if you've ever coached a freshman baseball game or a JV baseball game at the high school level, that sequence has probably been done once or twice. Probably has already happened this season. So
this is professional baseball we're talking about.
A little bit different. I expect more out of my Trash Pandas, honestly.
I don't know. I just got such a kick out of it, Bob. I thought it was one of the greatest box scores I've ever seen. I'm like, holy cow, this will never happen again in my lifetime. This is great. And that's
I have a prediction. That will not be the last Trash Pandas update that we get this season.
Yeah,
we will hear from them again.
The Trash Pandas are such a great name. And the best, there's two last things about it. One, it's almost perfect that it's the Angels minor league team, right? Because this is a Tungsten Armo Doyle, like
Sure.
total special right here. And two, and this is me getting, talking about the beauty of the sport. You watch it as much as we do and be around it as long as we have, and you always still can see something you've never seen before. And that's what I love about baseball, because this is 45 years of memory watching baseball, and I've never seen anything like this. And it's awesome. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fun.
Years from now, they'll ask, where were you the night the Trash Pandas no hit the opponent and gave up 7 runs?
Absolutely.
All right, well, there you go. Well, for the latest episode of Crossed Up, make sure that you're checking us out on YouTube, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your shows. Please also tell your friends. You've got friends that are Phillies fans, they're into baseball, they're looking for something new. There's a lot of good shows out there, but urge them to check this one out as well. So please give us a follow on Twitter at SanPhilly. I'm at Bob Wankel CB, and make sure that you're following the show on Twitter as well at UpPhillies. We will be back throughout the week with our morning after updates, and then Anthony and I will be back for our full show later this week on Friday morning. Phillies 3 games with the Miami Marlins, looking to get ever so closer to the 500 mark here early on and stay afloat through a turbulent start. Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.